5 years back, I found out I was pregnant with Noah's kid. Using that baby as my ticket, I married into Noah's family and became his legit wife. These past 5 years, Noah couldn't have been more indifferent to either me or our child. Just 3 days ago, his kid and I were killed in a car crash while he was off chasing his childhood dreams with his true love, Sophie and Geely. Even on the third day after David's death, Noah still hadn't shown up. People were flowing in and out of the mourning hall like waves, each face etched with sorrow and regret. But honestly, I knew it was all just fake. I was standing in the dining room, pouring myself a glass of water, ready to drink it, when I caught the sound of some women laughing behind me. They were talking about how it had been days since the kid died and Noah still hadn't come back. One whispered, "Noah went to Geely Snow Mountain with Sophie. Once you're there, there's no signal. Noah's family has gone nuts trying to call him, but he's not picking up. Maybe he's ignoring them on purpose." The woman had that smug smile. Everyone knew she only got in through an out-of-wedlock pregnancy. If it weren't for her, Noah and Sophie would have been together ages ago. Amid all this noise, I passed out from the overwhelming grief in the morning hall. They gave me some meds, and when I woke up, the chaos was still around. My head was pounding so bad I buried my face in the pillow, trying to escape reality. The salty, wet smell hit my nose. Tears I'd shed these past few days had soaked the pillow, yet Noah still hadn't come back. The noise faded as heavy footsteps approached. Someone in the crowd seemed to call out, "Noah, you're finally back!" But that was impossible. He was out in Geely with Sophie. How could he just show up? Even if he wanted to, would Sophie be cool with it? She'd deliberately taken off with Noah on an overseas flight on David's birthday. That night, David had lowered his head as the candles on his cake were about to burn out, the light reflecting on his chubby little face, showing his disappointment. He was such a sweet kid, but didn't touch the cake, asking in his innocent voice, "Mom, when is Dad coming back?" He didn't cry or make a fuss. He had been understanding since he was little, knowing his dad didn't love him and didn't love me either. In these 5 years, David's only wish was for his dad to spend a birthday with him. But until his death, that wish never came true. The chair beside me was dragged out, and someone sat down. That scent! It was the guy I'd shared a bed with for 5 years. Just by his breath, his movements, even a glance, I could feel him. I used to crave his closeness, but after being let down, I didn't want to look at him anymore. Noah sat down and mumbled, "I'm sorry." Again, he was sorry. When he went to Geely with Sophie, I blocked his way, grabbed his sleeve, and begged, "Can you go tomorrow? Today's David's 5th birthday, and he wants his dad to spend it with him." Knowing my place after so many years of marriage, I never dared ask him for anything, understanding this marriage wasn't something he wanted. But when it came to David, I always wanted to ask. But as expected, Noah pulled my hand away, looking expressionless. "I'm sorry, Sophie is waiting for me." But his kid was also waiting for him. This time, David was really pissed and wouldn't wait for him again. It was cold all around, and I curled up, burying my head deeper. Noah sat beside me. He knew I was awake. He was such a sensitive and suspicious person, always keeping tabs on my every move over the years. One side feared I'd trap him again. The other feared I'd hurt someone he loved. "Are you awake?" Noah's tone wasn't sad, but urgent. "Everyone downstairs has left. Get up and eat something." How could he be so calm? As if the one who died wasn't his kid. All these years, he never treated David like his own, nor did he treat me like his wife. If it weren't for my mom's schemes, I wouldn't have ended up in Noah's bed, wouldn't have become his wife. If it weren't for my mom's schemes, I wouldn't have become his wife. Noah hated me, hated my mother. He once called us the farmer and the snake. Thinking of David, I felt a wave of sorrow and buried my face in the wet pillow, my voice hoarse and broken, constantly choking. "Have you seen David?" "Yes." "Yes, that's good." I tried to hold back my sobs. "You can go out now." Noah's voice was like a breeze, always light and detached. I never got the call. Once I entered the mountain, the communication was dead. Really? Really? Was this him emphasizing or just trying to brush it off? Whatever it was, I didn't care anymore. "Yes, go out." Noah didn't budge. His attitude toward me super cold. Mia, the kid's so young. How could you let him go out alone? I'm his father. I think you owe me an explanation. Explanation? I let out a soft laugh, then moved my limbs and sat up. I must have looked awful, with tear stains on my face, marks on my skin, deep-set eyes, lifeless, pale as a ghost. In contrast, Noah was sitting upright, dressed in formal gear, looking impeccable, his face icy, showing no sadness, no tears. He was like an officer interrogating a criminal, and I, the mother, was the criminal. "What are you laughing at?" Noah asked, frowning. "I'm laughing at you." I leaned against the headboard, fragile as paper, easily torn, yet still sharp-edged. "Do you know where David was going?" Noah looked at me, signaling me to continue. "He was going to find you. He called you many times, but none went through. He said Dad might be lost and couldn't find his way home. So he went out to find you." Noah hesitated for a moment. "You didn't stop him?" "I could fool him once or twice, but he was worried about Dad. Suddenly, I felt both pathetic and ridiculous. Why did I need to explain to him? I stopped, took a deep breath. It was my fault. Those few words stirred a storm in the cold space. Noah's gaze scrutinizing. I met his gaze and said, word by word, my fault was not knowing my place, liking you, and by a twist of fate, marrying you and having David. My fault was giving birth to him, letting him suffer grievances, and not protecting him well. In Noah's oppressive gaze, I smiled. My biggest fault was having illusions about you, naively thinking we could go back to the way we were. Noah's expression was blank, speechless for a moment. When that slap landed, neither Noah nor I had time to react. Someone rushed in from outside, screaming and harshly scolding, hitting me, then grabbing my shoulders. "You couldn't even watch a kid. Do you deserve to be a mother?" It was Noah's younger sister. She was arrogant and domineering, always looking down on me and David. She had pushed David, fed him rotten peaches, and secretly told him that his dad hated him. Her grief and wailing were just an act in front of Noah. I sat there numb, taking several slaps, my mouth bleeding. Noah, as a husband, watched calmly, unmoved, his eyes full of indifference. From the past to the present, when David and I needed help the most, he never extended a hand. My hair was being pulled. It hurt. Amid the scolding, I met Noah's cold gaze. Once when I just fell and scraped my skin, he was super anxious, constantly asking if it hurt with a furrowed brow. Times have changed. Now I get beaten in front of him, and he stays indifferent. Over the years, my feelings for Noah shifted from youthful infatuation to cautious attachment due to his hot and cold treatment, eventually leading to a planned and orchestrated marriage, making me his wife. In the past, I had love, expectations, and guilt for him. The tension that had been building for days snapped. I suddenly sat up, grabbed my sister-in-law's arm, and slapped her back. She was stunned, covering her face, eyes wide open in disbelief. In this family, except for Noah, I hadn't wronged anyone, and certainly not David. This slap, I should return. The day we went to the cemetery, I bore visible injuries. My left cheek was swollen, and there were several scratches on my chin. If Noah hadn't stepped in and pulled my sister-in-law and me apart that day, the injuries might have been worse. But it was me that Noah pushed away. Sitting in the car, cold waves hit from all directions, but I couldn't feel the cold, staring blankly out the window. Noah sat next to me, then took a call from Sophie. On the day of David's burial, as his father, he still had to take a call from another woman. His tone was always casual, but he had special patience for Sophie. "Yes, I'll be busy for a few more days. You go back first." Her. I half turned, feeling Noah's gaze on me. Then he handed me the phone. "Sophie wants to talk to you." In the past, I probably would have tossed the phone away. But now, without David, what's the point? To Noah's surprise, I smiled and took the phone, pressing it to my ear. The screen still showed Noah's warmth. And in the past, I longed to be close to him. His scent, voice, and body heat. Now, just touching it made me nauseous. Sophie's voice came through the receiver, still elegant and cheerful. "Mia, are you okay?" I stayed silent, the presence beside me oppressive. as if daring me to say something harsh to Sophie, and he'd immediately throw me out of the car. Noah had done such things before. On a snowy night, I called Sophie in front of him, warning her to stop destroying someone else's family. Noah flew into a rage, smashed the phone, and kicked me out. That night, I walked for 2 hours in the freezing cold, and later I was sick for a week. He never came to see me. It was David who stayed by my bed, his little hands on my forehead, calling mommy over and over. I lived for David. Without me, how could that kid have survived in Noah's house? But now, without him, my spirit has been drained bit by bit, losing the will to live. In my ear, Sophie's voice repeated, "Mia, are you okay after losing your child?" Her voice was soft and low, making sure Noah wouldn't hear. "You must be terrible because you've lost your leverage." David was indeed my leverage to marry Noah. Without this kid, I couldn't have entered Noah's house. But without this kid, what's the point of staying in Noah's house? This was never a place I wanted to be, not from the start. I strained my dry throat. Then, "I'll give him back to you." Sophie was stunned. "What?" "I'll give him back to you." I corrected myself. "Sorry. He was yours to begin with." The phone was instantly snatched away, and Noah ended the call, his face full of incredulous anger. "What nonsense are you spouting to Sophie again? What could a mother who's lost her child say to her husband's lover?" There was no warning, no cursing, just letting go. Letting go so the lovers can be together. I can't hold on to this relationship anymore, nor do I want this life. In a drizzling rain, David was buried. The photo on the tombstone was taken when he was 3. We had planned to take a family portrait that day. David and I arrived early and waited all day. Around us were happy families, chatting and laughing, posing under the photographer's guidance. In their laughter, David and I seemed even more pitiful. I could bear Noah's indifference. But what about David? Under gloomy skies, in front of the cold tombstone, the photo showed no smile. After all, David had taken the photo while holding back his disappointment because he didn't want to make me sad. Someone held an umbrella beside me. I bowed my head, praying and repenting in front of David's tombstone, wishing for him to have loving parents in his next life, not to endure cold stares like in this one. Rain streaked before my eyes, and someone walked by. It looked like Noah. I lifted my heavy eyelids and saw his black coat brush by as he bent down to place something at David's grave. When he stood up, I saw clearly. It was a set of racing blocks. My heart sank. I was confused and grabbed Noah's sleeve. Afraid I'd cause a scene in front of the guests, he whispered, "Whatever you have to say it at home." "What is that?" I asked calmly. Noah looked back. "A birthday gift for David. He asked for it earlier but didn't get it in time." "He asked you for it?" "We planned it." Seeing the despair on my face, Noah grabbed my wrist. "What's wrong?" My legs went weak, feeling like a knife was twisting inside me, and I collapsed in front of David's grave, my kid. On his last birthday, he received a fake gift, yet he still smiled. David must have known the watch was from me, but I said it was from his dad, and he accepted it happily, even saying he wanted to thank his dad. He knew everything. He knew all these years his dad never loved him, not even preparing a birthday gift for him. Only after his death did he receive a belated gift. But what does it matter now? The atmosphere in the house was heavy. Noah's father was waiting for him, holding a cane, his thick brows tightly knit, but his tone to me was gentle. "Mia, you go upstairs first." I knew the old man was about to punish Noah again. Noah's father was the only one in this family who liked me, trusted me, and supported my marriage into the family because years ago my father saved his life in a critical moment. When my father passed away, our family's main support collapsed. Noah's family, out of gratitude, offered my mom a job as a housekeeper. Easy work with high pay. Noah's father also arranged for me to attend the same school as Noah, instructing him to take care of me as if I were his own sister. Noah did as told, but I, not knowing my place, fell in love with him. Noah's father found out that Noah was late to David's funeral and sent everyone else away to discipline him. The housekeeper ran up to me, begging desperately, dragging me along. "The master likes you the most. Say something nice for him, please. Go quickly." Say something nice for him, please. Go quickly. Why should I? In the past, I loved Noah with all my heart. When he was hurt or scolded, I felt worse than he did. But that was all based on my love for him. Later, watching him run around for Sophie day and night, my love disappeared, replaced by guilt and self-blame. So many times I wanted to leave with David, and just as many times Noah's father, with his weary eyes, begged me to stay for David's sake, for my mom's last wish. I shouldn't have agreed. After shedding the image of Noah's wife, I wore the simplest clothes. The suitcase contained nothing of mine, only David's stuff. I took off my earrings and placed them under the dressing table, making sure I hadn't taken anything that wasn't mine. A breath rose from the depths of my heart, and as it eased, I avoided the housekeeper and went downstairs. By then, Noah had already been beaten, kneeling on the ground, his hands supporting him, enduring it with gritted teeth. When he looked up, his bloodshot eyes met mine. But I didn't look at him for even a second. Noah's father dropped the cane and walked over. He was the person I respected most in this family, providing me with a good environment and education, giving my mom and me a place to stay. Even now, I'm still grateful to him. Uncle, I called him again, not father. I remember the day I entered this house. Noah's father took my hand and placed it on Noah's, earnestly advising him, Mia is a good girl, treat her well. Just like the day my mom and I came to Noah's house, he introduced me to Noah the same way. Mia will be your sister from now on. Go to and from school with her and take good care of her. The difference was that young Noah could still smile at me, look after me at school, take me to the cafeteria, wait for me after school, and even pull me along to watch him play basketball. Even though there were crowds of girls who liked him at the basketball court, he insisted that I go. He was so brilliant and excellent, always the center of attention wherever he went. I, on the other hand, was extremely ordinary. When I was with him, I always kept my head down, dressed plainly, with a ponytail, and wore my school uniform as if it would last forever. I didn't dare look him in the eye. So timid and introverted, not likable at all. Back then, everyone at school knew that Noah liked to be with me because his father owed my father his life. He was kind and didn't mind my unsociable and dull nature, always taking me with him. But when Sophie showed up, that balance was broken. She became the one watching Noah play basketball from the sidelines, the one having meals with him in the cafeteria. I can't recall how she quietly rose to prominence by Noah's side. I only remember that, at first, I didn't notice anything until Noah inexplicably became distant, and a classmate said in the bathroom, Mia is so oblivious. Noah and Sophie are dating, and she's still hanging around like a third wheel. Third wheel? Dating? These words made me shy away from Noah. From then on, I kept my distance, finding excuses to avoid having meals with him or going to and from school together, even avoiding him at home. But when I showed up in the cafeteria with a male classmate, Noah came over, standing by the table, looking down at me like a commoner. Not eating with me? Turns out you're dating? I didn't understand. I just didn't want to be a third wheel. But later, by some twist of fate, I ended up breaking up Sophie and Noah, a couple who were like gods. It was time to give this position back to Sophie. Noah, who had been kneeling, stood up. Those few hits didn't really hurt him. When he looked at me, I glanced at Noah's father. Uncle, I'd left everything that should be left in the bedroom. I'll be leaving today. Mia, moving out and divorcing were things I had already discussed with Noah's father a few days ago. He disagreed, trying his best to persuade me, just like all those years ago. But he knew that without David, I wouldn't stay in this prison my mom built for me. Noah, like an outsider, was puzzled by our conversation. Leave? Where to? His words enraged his father. Leave? Where to? His words enraged his father. You beast, shut up. Noah frowned, his gaze complicated and unreadable. Mia is my wife. Do I not have the right to ask where she's going? So he knew I was his wife, but this wife had never been acknowledged. Noah's father was so angry that his heart ached, clutching his chest, his face pale. I went to support him, softly comforting. Uncle, don't get agitated. Mia, Noah's father deeply regretted the breakdown of our marriage. He knew the fault lay with Noah, not blaming me. This is my fault. I failed to raise this beast properly, causing you pain. And David, if your mom knew, she would surely blame me. Uncle, there's no need to say this. I helped him sit down, catching Noah's inquisitive gaze. Uncle isn't in good health. You should take more care. Without the sorrow and tears of days past, my calm demeanor seemed even more tragic. As I walked past Noah, he grabbed my wrist. Explain. Where are you going? Why are you leaving? There is no greater sorrow than a heart that has died. This, Noah doesn't understand. No longer longing for him, I didn't look at him, forcefully shaking off his hand. On the third day after leaving Noah's house, I passed out at home. This was something I had expected. Stomach cancer, diagnosed 2 months ago. At that time, David was still around, and I was actively undergoing treatment. On the day I got the diagnosis, I mentioned it to Noah, but all I received was his cold stare. He had long since hated me to the core, and I realized it too late. I had planned to get better and leave Noah's house with David. Now it seems I will be going to find David. That day, what I didn't mention was that David ran out of the house to find Noah because I fainted from the pain. A 5-year-old doesn't know to call an ambulance. The first thing he thought of was his father. After all the twists and turns, I never expected that at the end of my life, the person I would open my eyes to see would be Henry. In school, Henry was in the same class as me. He came from a poor family but had excellent grades, wholly focused on his studies, the opposite of someone like Noah, who was highborn and wealthy. In the past, Noah said he was pretending to be aloof and told me to stay away from him. I defended Henry, and Noah scolded me for siding with outsiders. I knew Henry wanted to be a doctor and that he would succeed, but I never expected to be his first patient after he returned from further studies abroad. Standing by the bed in his white coat, he looked so impressive, highlighting my wretchedness and misery. It reminded me of when we were classmates, and he would always look at me disdainfully and say, "Mia, with such poor grades, how can you sleep so soundly?" Back then, I would always say dismissively, "Noah will take me to study abroad." He said, "I don't need to work so hard." Every time I said that, Henry's expression was always complicated. Now, looking back, I finally understand what he was thinking. Relying on someone who doesn't love you always ends tragically. And here I am, a living example. But no matter what, Dr. Henry saved my life. I lifted my hand with the fourth finger, bent my stiff fingers, and smiled at him. "Hi." Dr. Henry probably didn't want to talk to me, so he sent a nurse to take care of me. I was brought here by a neighbor, and the medical fees hadn't been paid. The nurse asked for a family member's contact number. I replied cheerfully, "No parents, no family." The nurse, filled with sympathy, was much gentler when removing the needle. Dr. Henry said, "You need to get an x-ray and a full checkup." I weakly put on my old coat. When I left Noah's house, I didn't take anything with me since those things weren't mine, and I feared Noah would come looking for them. I really didn't want to see him again. The old coat was from many years ago, not warm, with frayed cuffs, looking quite shabby. I shrank my hands into it and stood up. "No need, I just fainted from exhaustion. I'm in good health." At Noah's house, except for his father, no one respected me. They all knew I was living under someone else's roof, scheming to get into Noah's bed. And that's how I became Noah's wife. So over the years, I never enjoyed the treatment or love a wife should have. I lived worse than a housekeeper. Both mentally and physically, I had become nearly invincible. The nurse was half convinced, as my complexion was no better than the patients in the ICU. Of course, I am a late-stage stomach cancer patient, but that's a secret. When David was alive and needed my protection, I secretly visited many hospitals looking for treatment options, enduring excruciating pain, vomiting uncontrollably. I took the payment slip to the window to pay the bill. Holding my stomach, I walked out of the payment queue with difficulty, my vision blurry and dim, when I seemed to see Noah. He was wearing the coat I bought for him, holding another woman in his arms. At that moment, I wished my consciousness would blur a bit more so I wouldn't see the scarf around Sophie's neck that I had hand-knitted for Noah. After taking it, I had asked him many times, "Where's the scarf?" He only said he forgot. Turns out he gave it to Sophie. He could have thrown it away, but he chose to humiliate me instead. I wasn't surprised. Instead, I felt a deep sense of calm. Perhaps at that moment, Noah exhausted all the love and guilt I had for him, burying them along with David's death. Awakening from a dream, I had lost my child during my marriage, had nothing left while he had a new partner by his side, his wishes fulfilled. In the bustling hospital, I recalled many times over the years when I gave Noah ties that Sophie took and used as rags, when I waited until late at night on his mom's death anniversary, only to see a post from Sophie on her social media saying, "You always make my heart ache," and even the scarf I painstakingly knitted, now worn by Sophie. My mom had taught me how to knit. It was my first time knitting, and when I gave it to Noah, I was nervous, hoping for a smile from him. But there was none. He just took it and said, "Don't waste your effort next time." He was trying to tell me that no matter how hard I tried, it would be in vain. But I just wanted to make up for things, to be a good wife. And back then, the person who stood by me, tugging at my clothes to comfort me, was David. He said, "Mom, don't be sad. Dad's just being stubborn." Silly child, if you love someone, how could you be stubborn? He was never stubborn with Sophie. 2 weeks after David's death, I began relying on painkillers to survive. As my body's condition worsened, the pain intensified, and I couldn't bear it. I had to take painkillers to cope. After each bout of vomiting, I felt like an empty shell, with nothing left in my stomach, progressing to the point where even drinking a glass of water caused pain. I needed to take a lot of painkillers, clutching David's favorite teddy bear to fall asleep. In my drowsiness, I often wondered if David felt this much pain when he passed away. He had no painkillers to take. It must have been excruciating for him. It's my fault. I didn't take good care of him. My David. Before my consciousness faded, I heard persistent knocking. If it weren't for the lingering pain, I might have mistaken it for the tolling of a death bell. Standing at the door was Dr. Henry, making my expression even more strained. He wasn't this persistent before. When I asked him to help me with questions, he was always indifferent, as cold as could be. "What happened now?" "Mia, your condition is serious. You should go to the hospital for a checkup as soon as possible." He was a doctor, a good one, who could immediately discern the severity of my illness. Henry hadn't changed much from the past, except he had grown a bit, and the arrogance between his brows had intensified. As Noah said, he was aloof, and aloof people couldn't tolerate humiliation. I didn't want to offend anyone before dying. "Dr. Henry, don't you have patience?" I tried my best to portray myself as a sharp-tongued woman. "How much commission can you earn by making me take a few more tests?" Henry's eyelid twitched. "Mia, I'll give you money. Just stop pestering me." With that, I went inside to get money and stuffed it into his hand. "Is this enough?" Dr. Henry left. After all, who would tolerate an unreasonable patient? Dying alone is my best outcome. I swallowed the pills, drew the curtains, and was about to rest when two figures downstairs caught my eye. It was Henry and Noah. How did he find this place? Shouldn't he be with Sophie right now? They were arguing, almost coming to blows. Ignoring my physical discomfort, I rushed downstairs, instinctively placing myself between them, suppressing the itch in my throat and weakly looking up. "What are you doing here?" Noah still looked the same, standing in the evening breeze, the hem of his coat fluttering lightly with the wind. The moonlight fell on his chiseled features, giving him a layer of cool detachment. His gaze towards Henry was full of hostility and aggression, just like when we were in school. Whenever he saw Henry using my things or fetching water for me, he'd be angry for half a day. He would then ask me, "Mia, don't you have hands? Why do you need someone else to help you?" He didn't allow other men to help me, but he could give all his kindness to Sophie. I used to love him and distance myself from many people for him, but now, I just want to follow my heart. I shielded Henry behind me, turned around, and pulled his sleeve, urging him to leave. He and Noah locked eyes, the tension palpable. If it weren't for my plea, he wouldn't have left like this. Seeing this, Noah's expression turned into a cold storm. He sneered at me. "Leaving a good life at home to come here. Turns out you're with your lover. A good life, being neglected by my husband, despised by everyone, losing my kid. That's Noah's idea of a good life." After we got married, he hated me, humiliated me, and I could understand. After all, I ruined his lifelong happiness with Sophie. Now that I'm about to die, he shouldn't have come. I don't want this kind of good life anymore. You can leave it for Sophie. I wish you both a lifetime of happiness and lots of kids for Sophie. I said it calmly, without hysteria or breakdown, as simply as when I left Noah's house that day, as if saying, "I won't be here for the next meal." Noah's pupils flashed with an almost imperceptible surprise. All these days, he probably thought my request for a divorce was a moment of impulsiveness due to David's death. After all, I had proposed leaving before, but it always ended up unresolved. His suspicion was understandable. "Mia, are you sure? This is my most resolute decision, one that won't change. Isn't my leaving also what you've wanted all these years?" After a moment of silence, Noah nodded with a mocking smile. You said it. Don't come to me with regrets in the future. Watching his departing figure, I couldn't help but wonder, do I even have a future? That night, I saw Sophie's new social media post, finally together. The picture was of a brand new diamond ring on her finger. The cancer cells had spread throughout my body, and I wasn't sure to what extent. I faced it with a smile, even somewhat looking forward to death. After all, on that day, I would be able to see David again. I hadn't seen him for over half a month, and missed him dearly. However, I hadn't thought about Noah once, despite not seeing him for many days. In the past, I used to care for him meticulously. When he went on business trips, I packed his luggage, managed the household affairs, and handled relationships with relatives and friends. He attended social gatherings and came back drunk. I'd change his clothes and feed him hangover soup. He and I would share a bed but dream different dreams, and late at night, he'd call Sophie to assure her of his safety. I was busy inside and out, but the woman he always had by his side was Sophie. During his business trips, he wouldn't even answer my calls. The few times he did, it was Sophie who answered. Sophie naturally became the one beside Noah. She smiled and told me, Noah is asleep. No wonder he despises you. Do you only know how to bother him? I told her. Take good care of him. Do you need to say that? Do you really think of yourself as his wife? If you hadn't schemed against him, did you really think you could marry him? At that moment, I was speechless. Do you really think you could marry him? At that moment, I was speechless. Without these matters, I lived much more lightly. To hang on a bit longer, I still went to the hospital, not for treatment, but just to get some medication to last until Christmas. David loved Christmas. If I went to see him on that day, he would surely be happy. Walking through the bustling crowd, I must have looked too unhealthy, despite being wrapped in thick clothing and a scarf. The empty sleeves revealed my emaciated frame after getting the medicine, and leaving the hospital, Dr. Henry wearing a white coat chased after me. I turned to look at him as he walked closer, his gaze fixed on my face. I covered my face with the scarf, afraid of being recognized. After all, no one but a severely ill person would lose weight so drastically in such a short time. A sickly kind of thinness. Mia? Henry seemed like he wanted to say something but ended up sighing instead. Where are you going now? I grunted. The station? I'll take you there. For some reason, tears welled up in my eyes. I wanted to refuse, but Henry had already started walking ahead. The road outside the hospital saw many people every day. I wasn't the only one suffering from a terminal illness, alone and destitute. Henry's voice sounded in my ear. After I left last time, did Noah misunderstand you? He used to always misunderstand things between you and me. I shook my head. No, we're divorced. I was surprised when I heard about your marriage while studying abroad. When I was leaving, he came to find me and threatened me not to leave. He said you... Henry lowered his head, looking at our two shadows on the ground, and chuckled. Forget it, but Noah is truly contradictory. He told me not to like you, yet he only saw you as a sister. I stopped in my tracks. When did he say that? After Sophie appeared. I remembered that before Sophie showed up, Noah would suddenly come and snatch my soda, drink what I had drunk, then kiss my cheek and remind me, don't drink too much cold stuff. This belongs to me now. But that was so long ago, long enough that I almost forgot we had such beautiful memories. Many people noticed the ambiguity between us. At first, Noah didn't explain. I found him and followed him. That evening, his shadow was elongated by the sunset. Under the sycamore tree, his eyes were affectionate. I asked him, why don't you explain? He retorted, explain what? In the sweltering atmosphere, Noah blinked, about to say something when the driver's car arrived to pick us up. After we returned home, Noah went alone to his father's study and stayed there for a long time. After that, Noah suddenly became cold, no longer taking me out for meals, not even picking me up. I went to find him a few times, but he always said, don't bother me. I didn't know what happened and tried my best to please him, but it was all in vain. Soon after, Sophie appeared. He no longer drank my soda or kissed me, and he became increasingly distant from me. When a friend asked him, aren't you with Mia? Why are you still entangled with Sophie? He frowned in displeasure and said, I only see Mia as a sister. If not for her father, she wouldn't even be qualified to be my sister. No wonder he had such a cold expression when I called him on my birthday and sternly warned me, Mia, you're here because of your father. There's no other reason. Don't go around telling people about our relationship. Before you speak, ask yourself if you deserve it. Such cold words broke my heart. A few days later, my mom also told me not to dream of climbing high. We were just guests in Noah's house and had to be cautious. Since then, I put away the unwarranted fantasies and affections until these feelings almost faded. Then my mom sent me to Noah's bed. Since then, my life has been filled with regret and remorse. In front of Henry, I let go and said, Noah and I have no relationship. Those words reached Noah's ears within hours. The desolate night sky enveloped the dark vehicle. Noah stood by the car, having taken off his coat, wearing only a suit. Smoke curled around his fingers, enveloping him, making him seem unreal. No relationship. Mia, you did give me a kid. He still remembered we had a child. Henry must have told him. I had no strength to delve into it, just smiled and said, the kid is gone. Isn't that no relationship at all? Noah was momentarily choked. As a cigarette burned to its end, almost scorching his fingers, he tenderly said, Mia, there will be more kids. No, there won't. David was one of a kind. There will be no more. Not denying, I followed his words. Yes, you and Sophie will have many kids. I just want to find a quiet place to spend the last days of my life. And what about you? Noah asked with a mocking tone. Are you going to have kids with Henry? My mind was swelling, not noticing his use of again. I just wanted to get rid of this man who caused me so much pain. The more I saw him, the more I thought of David. Even my tone became desperate. You might as well think that. As I turned to leave, Noah got angry and grabbed my arm tightly. His usually emotionless face showed a hint of turmoil. Have you forgotten? You're still my wife. Soon I won't be. Have you forgotten? You're still my wife. Soon I won't be. The wind rushed into my throat, bringing a bitter taste. Noah scrutinized me, as if trying to discern the truth in my words. After a moment, he concluded, Mia, your scare tactics are as foolish as ever. Do you think you can survive without me? Is it just a scare? No one would use their own life to scare him. Besides, with or without him, it seems I can't go on living. After this, to force me to come back, Noah didn't finalize the division of our divorce assets. He went out of his way to humiliate me, even reclaiming the house I was living in. I was homeless while he was marrying someone new. Nobody typically remarries within a month after losing a child, but Noah pulled it off. The buzz about his wedding to Sophie spread like wildfire. I heard all about how happy the day was, how pissed off his dad got, how thrilled Noah's family was, and all the juicy gossip that followed. But to me, it just seemed like a joke. I'm not part of this joke anymore, so why should I give a damn? When Sophie hit me up, I was downing my meds with some warm water. The bitter taste hit me hard, making me feel like puking. Mia, I'm getting married to Noah. The wedding's next month, she said. What's that got to do with me? Just forget it. Without another word, I simply said, Congrats. Then I hung up and kept taking my meds. Little did I realize, when Sophie called, Noah was right there beside her, looking down and not like a happy groom at all. He must have figured out that the divorce was for real and that I didn't have feelings for him anymore. Feeling homeless, like a stray dog. When Noah called, it was probably to mess with me. I was standing by the station entrance with my luggage, watching people come and go. His voice, kinda dreamy and unreal, came through the phone. Mia, I'll give you one more shot. Wanna come back? My eyes felt dry. He was still a softie. Maybe he was just reminiscing and trying to convince me to return. But why didn't he stick around with David when things were tough? It's too late now. Nobody wants that kind of compromise anymore. I held David's teddy bear, still smelling like a kid and the faint warmth of his skin. Touching it felt like connecting with David's soul. Noah, I'm never coming back. Never again. I looked down at the teddy bear's eyes, like staring into David's soul, and trembled as I said, I wronged you in the past. I'm sorry. I'm sorry on behalf of my mom. I actually planned to divorce you a few years back, but your dad promised to take care of me and said no. That's what delayed you and Sophie. I'm truly sorry. After that, I hung up, Before getting on the bus, I got a text from Henry. Mia, you have advanced gastric cancer. Why don't you get treatment? Cancer. Why not seek treatment? When Henry found me, I was by the seaside. This was David's last wish. I made a list, planning to fulfill his wishes before my time ran out. The first item, celebrate a birthday with Dad. I checked it off. The second, go to the seaside with the family. After the divorce, I was David's only family left. This wish was fulfilled. Standing by the seaside, the sand was soft and damp. Waves gently touched my feet, and the vast blue ocean was stained by my tears. I wanted to make things right, but my sobs just got louder. And how awesome it would have been to bring David here while he was still alive. At least he wouldn't have left with so many regrets. Back then, I always wanted the whole family together. Noah couldn't be missing. But in the end, I was alone by the sea. The wind and sand made every part of me ache. I struggled to get back to the hotel. When I reached my room, Henry was there, like a ghost. His silhouette showed his anger, but his professional side as a doctor was clear. Mia, you know you're courting death, right? A patient not getting treatment, traveling so far, it's like asking for it. I didn't have time to take painkillers before the pain knocked me out. Luckily, I passed out next to a doctor. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to fulfill David's third wish. Dr. Henry wanted to take me to the hospital, but at my stage, it was just wasting money on hospitalization. I barely had any cash left. Henry had been covering my medical bills before. He wasn't rich. Back in school, he always wore a white shirt that was so worn out and wrinkled it turned gray. In the sunlight, you could see the fuzz on the fabric. Unlike Noah's wealth, Henry lived frugally. Because of his thriftiness, I felt I needed to repay him. The guy I loved for 10 years wasn't around anymore. In the end, it was Henry who saved me and paid for my hospital bills and meds. I asked him, "Why are you being so nice to me? It's been ages since anyone treated me this well." Henry didn't say anything. He just handed me a clean scarf and wrapped it around my neck. Henry stayed silent, just wrapped the scarf around me, then said, "You were good to me before." Was I? I don't remember. Turns out being this sick messes with your memory. Back then, I was all eyes for Noah. Of course, I wouldn't remember helping someone like me. For some reason, I heard resentment in his voice. Henry knew how to save people. He gave me meds and looked at my sickly face seriously. Painkillers won't save you. You need to start chemotherapy ASAP. Can chemo save me? It'd just make me suffer again and leave me dying ugly. I didn't want that. I wanted to die gracefully so David would remember me. I didn't want to scare him. Henry's silence was his answer. He was a doctor, but no one could promise a cancer patient's lifespan for sure. I held the cup of hot water, calmly accepting my fate. "Dr. Henry, since you're here, can you do me a favor?" Henry turned away, but I saw a tear glimmer at the corner of his eye. "No, I can't handle your final arrangements." "No, that's not it. I'd never let someone as pure as him deal with such grim stuff." "Can you take a photo of me and burn it after I die?" The seaside restaurant terrace had a killer view of the ocean. I stood there in clean clothes, but my fragile body couldn't handle the wind for long. Henry helped me snap a pic by the sea. This photo was for David, to show him his wish was fulfilled by his mom. I leaned on the railing, showing the first real smile in days. Henry tried his best to get a good shot, but a patient can never look truly beautiful. As I tried to smile, someone suddenly popped up behind Henry and snatched the phone. He looked down at the photos, each one of me by the sea, all taken by Henry. The beautiful moments were shattered. My photos were deleted one by one. In the dim light, all captured by Henry. The lovely scene was ruined. My pics were wiped out one by one. In the faint light, I saw Noah clutching the phone, his knuckles white, jaw tight. His eyes seemed to see a pair of cheaters. "Mia, how long have I been looking for you? Have you been with him all this time?" Henry stepped forward, probably to explain my condition. I grabbed his hand, using it to support myself. "Haven't congratulated you on your wedding yet?" I looked around. "Where's Sophie?" The four of us sat at the same table. The last time this happened was back in school. All these years later, Sophie hadn't changed a bit. She was still the one doing most of the talking at the table. She served me food, oblivious to how crazy the situation was. "Mia, you've lost so much weight in just a few days. It's not just the weight, Even my lips are bloodless. Her comment made Noah look at me. His eyes seemed pained, but it was probably just my imagination. How could he feel sorry for me? Is this how Mr. Henry takes care of you? What's this got to do with Henry? To me, he was just an old classmate and a doctor. I was thankful he left his job to find me, convince me to get chemo, and stay with me for 2 days. What right did Noah have to diss him? How he cared for me was our business. For the first time, I left Noah without responding. When I was a student, I followed him around like a little shadow. After we got married, no matter how much he neglected me and David, I still saw him as my husband. I waited up for him till the early morning, made him hangover soup, and cleaned him up. When he was sick, I took care of him nonstop. But that Mia died with David, long gone. Sophie laughed awkwardly and put her hand on Noah's. Noah, didn't I tell you? Mia is totally fine. See, you were stressing over nothing. Noah pulled his hand away. That's when I noticed the ring on Sophie's hand was gone, and Noah was wearing the wedding ring we used to share. What's that mean? All these years of marriage, I was the only one wearing that ring. It was like our marriage was always my solo act. Now that I bailed, Noah put the ring back on. So ironic. Mia, I remember you used to love spicy food, Sophie said as she placed a spicy grilled lamb piece in my bowl. The heat made my throat uncomfortable. Henry pushed the plate away. What I liked before doesn't mean I like it now. With stomach cancer, eating spicy was deadly. Henry was trying to help, but Sophie teased, Dr. Henry still loves protecting Mia. I always said you two were a perfect match. Congrats, you finally ended up together. Have you said enough? Noah's voice was stiff. Shut your mouth! Embarrassment and panic flashed on Sophie's face. Noah would never talk to her like that. Even I was surprised. He cherished Sophie, protecting her like she was precious, never speaking harshly. Now, he was cold to her over some joke. Plus, back in school, he didn't mind joining Sophie and teasing us. When Henry and I ate together, Sophie would suddenly show up and tease us with vague comments. Noah stood by her, giving us the cold shoulder, then said, So much talk over a meal. You two really are a pair. He'd said that before, but now he wouldn't let Sophie say it. Noah pushed the meat back to me. I didn't like it, but he always forced me to eat it. I don't believe eating one bite will hurt. Will you be satisfied if I eat it? I picked up my chopsticks with a sense of resignation. My eyes reddened. I had loved him once, stayed with him out of guilt, and now I had nothing left. He just wanted to drive me to my death. Before he could answer, I ate the meat under Noah's stunned gaze, chewing and swallowing it. Henry suddenly grabbed my chopsticks. Mia, do doctors always make such a fuss? It wasn't poison. It wouldn't kill me. I didn't want to die yet. I just wanted to be free from Noah. It was strange. When we were married, I longed to see him, but he was never home. Weird. When we were married, I wanted to see him, but he was always away. After the divorce, he always showed up. But what good was it to me now? Sudden pain gripped me. Covering my mouth, my face turned pale. Henry stood up and blurted out, You claim to be Mia's husband, but she has stomach. His voice cut off. I grabbed his hand tightly. Noah was puzzled. Stomach what? Stomach issues? As soon as I said it, I couldn't stop coughing. Bending over, a crimson stain appeared on my palm. How could it be blood if it was just a stomach issue? Since returning from the seaside, Noah's visits had increased while my complexion got worse. He dragged me to the hospital. I shook off his hand. Stop bothering me, okay? My determination made Noah panic. Mia, you never told me you had stomach problems. My throat was dry, and my hoarse voice was like a rusty saw cutting through rotten wood, widening the gap between Noah and me. It's just a stomach issue. You should go take care of Sophie. Aren't you scared I'll really marry her? Noah gripped my wrist tightly, his warmth mixing with mine. Without David, what's the point of being Noah's wife? I only wish you lots of kids. Noah might have loads of kids in the future, but there'd never be another David. He was the first and Noah's lifelong regret. After David died, Noah rarely showed his grief, but now he stood before me with such sorrow, earnestly asking, Mia, in your heart, who's more important? This child or me? David is more important. I bit my lip, swallowing my pain and bitterness. If it wasn't for David, our marriage wouldn't have lasted this long. In that moment, something seemed to break in Noah's eyes. I shook him off, went upstairs, and locked the door. I took a bunch of painkillers, but before the meds kicked in, the pain in my abdomen made multiple organs act up. It felt like a giant hand was inside me, scratching and tearing, a living hell. I rushed to the bathroom, vomiting. I saw a streak of red blood. Looking down as I closed the window, Noah was still standing there, like a statue in the night breeze. Exhausted, I collapsed on the bed. I didn't know how much time passed before my phone rang. It was Noah, sounding drunk and clueless with his words. "Mia, I miss David." I hung up and painfully blacklisted his number. I couldn't forgive myself. This illness was my punishment, and I accepted it willingly. But before I died, 2 of David's wishes were still pending. Item 3, Dad agreed to raise a kitten. He said all his kindergarten classmates have one, and he wanted one too. But when Noah heard this, he looked disgusted and told the kid, "Isn't raising you enough?" He didn't want another bond with me, and I get that. However, he shouldn't talk to the kid like that. We had a huge fight that day, and he called me an unreasonable shrew. I told him he didn't deserve to be a father. He coldly laughed 3 times. "Do you think I wanted to be this kind of father?" My blood boiled, and I rushed at him, slapping him. He pushed me onto the broken glass, and my palm was bleeding. He left without a care. That day I thought David had been taken to school by the driver, but he was hiding at home. He wiped the blood off my hand, crying and confused. His little face was wrinkled, and he wiped away tears, saying, "Mom, I don't want the kitten anymore. I don't want it ever again." David is so young, and his wishes are simple. I wanted to fulfill his wish, so I bought another kitten. It was also pure white, small and soft. Holding it in my arms, it was well-behaved and didn't meow much. David loved it and took good care of it. We named it Kitty. During those days, Noah didn't come home. But when he returned, he threw Kitty out. David said it was okay, but I knew he was still upset. I went to the pet store to look at more kittens for David. They came in various colors, some lazy, some lively. One caught my eye. It had pink paws and was all white except for a black mark on its ear. I recognized it immediately. It was Kitty. It had grown a bit chubby with round cheeks. When we first got it, it was so small David could hold it with both hands. The day Noah ditched it, David didn't say anything. But the next morning, his pillow was damp from tears. Seeing Kitty was like seeing David again. I couldn't hold back my excitement, tapping on the glass. The pet store staff rushed over, pushing me away. They probably thought I was crazy, but I wasn't. I was just overwhelmed with emotion. Getting Kitty back felt like a second chance, but the person who came to pick up Kitty wasn't David. It was Sophie. She walked over from outside the pet store, our eyes locking. She glanced at the cat and said, "Mia, do you like Belle?" The kitten was brought out, and I watched my husband being taken away by Sophie. I saw David's cat snuggling in her arms, getting close to her. "We call her Belle," Sophie said. "Want to pet her?" Belle? She wasn't called Kitty anymore, but she was still Kitty to me. I remembered. I couldn't help myself and lunged to grab the cat, scaring Sophie. She stepped back. "Mia, what are you doing? Are you always this possessive? It's David's cat, not yours." I shouted, emotions in chaos. My stomach twisted in pain. Sophie looked amused. "Mia, Noah gave her to me. Why should she be yours? You've monopolized him for so many years, and now you want to snatch a cat too." It was Noah. He took David's cat and gave it to Sophie. Why did he have the right? Even if he hated me, David was innocent. When did my stuff become Sophie's gifts? Probably since his birthday. Ever since Sophie showed up, Noah's attention followed her. She was standout, and they seemed like a perfect match. Noah would get upset if Sophie didn't give him a birthday gift. That night, Noah sat on the steps, gazing at the moon. His youthful face was handsome, bathed in moonlight. His eyes looked hollow and dim. He asked me, "Mia, do you think she forgot my birthday?" He was talking about Sophie. I had my own sadness and gave him the watch I'd saved up to buy. "Maybe she's busy. This is for you." Noah took it without even looking. The next day, he picked me up with Sophie. I saw my watch on her wrist. Later, it was the driver Noah sent to pick her up, then my design sketches for her competition, and eventually, the chance to go abroad. That day, Noah stood before me, unapologetic. Mia, Sophie needs to go abroad more than you. She's talented and shouldn't be held back. On the same day, my mother was diagnosed with stomach cancer, and her time was limited. She wanted Noah to take me abroad. It was her dying wish. I couldn't help but sit by my mother's bedside and cry all night. I wasn't sure if I was crying over the lost chance to go abroad, the impending loss of my mom, or Noah's heartlessness. At that moment, I didn't get how deadly a child's tears could be in a mother's eyes. Tears that could lead my otherwise unremarkable, honest mother to design Noah. On the night before Noah and Sophie left the country, I slept with him. I understood my mother's intentions. She feared Noah would marry Sophie, leaving me without a place in his home after she passed. If I'd known the drink was tainted, I wouldn't have taken it. But Noah didn't believe me. He pinned me to the hotel bed, questioning my relationship with Henry, accusing me of having ulterior motives. I denied any knowledge. He laughed cruelly, tightening his grip. His words cut like a blade, tearing open my chest. You're just like your mother, a born vampire. Oh, and those were the last few days of my mother's life. With scars on my face, I confronted her, blaming her. I asked her directly, "What was your relationship with Noah's father?" Her face turned pale, the oxygen mask muffling her voice. She whispered, "Who?" "Told you. Noah." Tears flowed again as I confessed. He said if a mother couldn't make it, the daughter would take her place. My mother shook her head stiffly. Crying, I asked, "What should I do now, Mom?" That was our final conversation, our last meeting. In my dreams, I knelt at her grave, admitting my mistakes. But the hand that reached out to comfort me was soft, warm, and smelled of childhood innocence. It was David's. Yet, in an instant, his hand grew cold, his body stiff. I held him, wailing, shouting, "Is there no one to save my child?" No one could save him. I watched him take his last breath in my arms. Later, I learned that my mother and Noah's father had almost been together, but her illness and my feelings for Noah changed everything. She wanted to ensure my future, even if it meant a bitter parting. Yet, I disappointed her. I lost Noah's wife status, my child, and caught the same illness as her. The wait was agonizing. Here I was, day after day, waiting for Noah to come home. But this time, after just half an hour, I felt exhausted. Life slipped away. At this rate, would I make it until Christmas? David always loved Christmas, and this year, Kitty was my gift to him. For Kitty's sake, I had to find Noah and confront him. When Noah arrived, I waited downstairs at our old home. His face was ashen, and he asked gently, "Why aren't you resting in your room? Is your stomach still bothering you?" Stomach issues? It was cancer. Desperate, I asked, "Did you give Kitty to Sophie?" "What Kitty?" He didn't know David's cat's name, gave it to Sophie, and renamed it Belle. I couldn't laugh or cry. Calmly, I said, "David's cat. It belongs to him." Noah's eyes showed a mix of emotions. He reached out to touch my face, an apology in his expression. "Let's go upstairs first. We'll talk about the cat later." But I couldn't wait. All I wanted was David's cat. My voice rose uncontrollably. The moment the anger surged, I couldn't help but cough. Bending over, my face flushed as I coughed until I felt dizzy. Noah patted my back to help me breathe easier, but I pushed his hand away, looking urgent. "Don't worry, I'll call and get it now." He took out his phone, glanced at the empty coffee table, and yelled in frustration, "Why is there no water here? Is everyone dead?" It was rare for him to care if I had water to drink. After making the call, I waited for Noah's response. He walked over, speaking firmly. "I'll bring Kitty back for you." "Can you wait here for me? I had another thing to handle. Can you give me my share of the money after our divorce? I need it urgently." I had to repay Henry. He wasn't from a rich family, and I'd spent too much lately. "Are you here to ask about the cat or for money?" "Both," I replied. His expression got even more complicated. Weakly, he pulled out a card from his wallet and handed it to me. "The password is David's birthday." It turns out he remembered David's birthday, that date, yet never showed up. I took the card from him, but he didn't let go. "I'll give you the money, but it's not divorce compensation." Noah continued solemnly, "Mia, wait for me. I'll go find David's cat and we can start fresh. I've redecorated David's room. And next time, we'll celebrate his birthday together. Is that okay? But I won't wait for David's next. And next time, we'll celebrate his birthday together. Is that okay? But I won't wait for David's next birthday anymore. Why couldn't Noah have agreed to celebrate David's birthday sooner? It's too late. Noah is truly too late. This wait feels like a lifetime. As pain tormented me, I gazed at Noah's old home. I remembered the first time I entered here with my mother. Noah still looked like a young man then. Later, we got married in this house. On the night I wore my wedding dress, I waited for everything, but nothing came. Soon after, my mother passed away. In our new home with Noah, I cried. He found me annoying and kicked me out. During the months I carried David, I stayed deep in grief. By the time I realized I was pregnant, it was too late for surgery. Noah kept urging me to terminate the pregnancy. He truly hated this child. I refused. I raised David step by step, giving him his shots and meds, dressing him warmly, soothing him to sleep. His tears broke my heart, and his laughter eased my worries. David knew his father didn't love him or me. To get a bit more love, he hurt himself, purposely catching colds and fevers, all to make Noah visit us. But that wasn't what I wanted. I only wanted David to be okay. I'd whispered to him, "Don't hurt yourself. Nothing matters more than you." Besides, lying and deceit are wrong. But David didn't listen. He was just a kid, desperate to see his parents together. Soon Noah found out about David's ploy. Even when he heard of David's death, he thought it was another joke. In this house, I met Noah, lost my mom, had a child, and lost him again. Maybe we've reached the end. These fleeting memories flooded my mind. Noah returned in the early morning. He cradled a pure white kitten in his arms, touching my nose with its paw. "Mia, here's the kitty you wanted. I found her." Is this Kitty? I could barely see. When I reached for the cat, I hesitated. The kitten's eyes were a different color. Its ears matched, and the size was similar. Yet something was off. It was intuition. "What's wrong?" Noah asked. He let the cat lie in his lap, saying, "When David was little, I worried that having a pet would harm him, and you'd be upset. So I didn't allow him to have one." I lowered my hand. "I don't want to hold the cat anymore. This isn't Kitty. Why deceive me with a fake kitty? If David knew, he'd blame me." "Noah, there's no need to lie at this point." Here I'd waited a lifetime. Yet I didn't have a lifetime. Yet I didn't even get David's cat in the end. Noah hesitated. "Lie? About what? This isn't Kitty," I said firmly. "Where's Kitty?" He'd really gone to Sophie for this. Upon closer inspection, his face had a palm print, and his collar was wrinkled. They must have argued. Yet he returned, still holding the cat to comfort me. Kitty fell from a height. Just half an hour after Noah made the call, Sophie was the culprit, but no one could punish her. I felt pain and grief, yet I was numb. "I'm leaving." "Where are you going?" Noah let the cat slip from his arms, his expression pleading. But what was he asking for? Home. My strength drained away. Darkness enveloped me, and as I whispered 3 words, "Find David," I collapsed in front of Noah. So noisy. "Who's knocking? Calling my name?" I struggled to stay conscious, but my thoughts were muddled. The noise was faint, fragmented, like someone yelling, breaking things. The family doctor's collar was pulled up. "She's my wife. She's sick." "Why didn't you tell me?" I saw it. The doctor from Noah's house stood there, with the indifferent Henry. He confronted Noah. "She's your wife, and she's dying." "Did you only find out about her stomach cancer now?" "Noah, please calm down." The doctor tried to keep things orderly. 2 months ago, I called you. You said Mia's situation had nothing to do with you." So, he knew all along. I exhaled slowly, the oxygen mask pressing against my face. Each breath felt like a countdown. Precious and tough, Noah approached. Before my impending death, I saw that once proud man bow his head. He hesitated to hold my hand, fearing he might hurt me. His hand hovered in the air, like a kid trying to fix a broken toy, unsure where to start. A moment passed. He covered his face, and I faintly heard his sobbing echo through the hospital room. So noisy. Could he please stay away? Unfortunately, I couldn't speak or scold him. I lost track of time. Dr. Henry came over. My eyelids fluttered as I saw his white-coated figure standing behind Noah. "You're disturbing her," Henry said softly. "Get out!" Noah's voice cracked, hoarse and desperate. He cried for a long time, annoyingly long. I thought my tears were the most, but he wept too, for me. "People only regret when it's too late." Henry's words pierced like needles. "Back then, you doubted us. Even after marriage, you still doubted. But did you ever think she just wanted to be your wife? I'm not worthy of Mia. I never expected her to fall ill. Truly, I didn't. The hospital was packed with critically ill patients. They couldn't eat, surviving on pills. Coughing blood was the least of their troubles. The pain of daily blood draws was unbearable. How could Noah know? He saw my actions as just tantrums after David's death, thinking I'd eventually come back. They argued by my bedside, completely indifferent to my impending demise. Noah gently tucked my hand under the blanket, turning away from Henry. "Aren't you a doctor? Can't you save Mia? She no longer wants to live. No one can save her now." At this point, Henry spoke the truth. "Get out," Noah repeated. The room went silent. My body felt ethereal. My hand was lifted, pressed against Noah's cheek. Tears fell as he kissed my palm. "Why didn't you tell me about your illness? Because David was gone. You didn't even bother treating your own sickness." "What should I do? Your heart only had room for that child. Did you ever share any of it with me?" Noah slapped his own face with my limp hand. "I was wrong. How could I be jealous of David? Or even jealous of Henry? We were husband and wife. Mia, feel free to wake up and scold me. Hit me. I'm willing." He called my name, and I heard it. I longed to break free, but I saw David waving at me. He called me Mom, saying, "It's so dark here, and I'm scared." I wanted to rush over and hug him. Yet Noah's grip held me back. Why wouldn't he let go at this moment? A needle pierced my skin, pain making me furrow my brow. My toes curled, and every joint seemed to ache. Medication flowed into my body, momentarily easing the pain. But the agony of life couldn't be numbed by drugs. Busy figures moved around my bedside. Doctors, nurses, their anxious voices surrounded me. The life signs on the ECG were faint, teetering on the brink. Once again, I glimpsed David. He sat on a soft grassy patch, his small body nestled in the green. When he looked up, his soft face had dimples, and his smiling eyebrows curved. He sweetly called me Mom. I wanted to hold him, but someone else kept calling my name, pulling me back. Reality twisted. Noah's face appeared before me. He kept calling my name, but I wanted to follow David. I wished to say, "Stop, let me go. This is my final wish." But he didn't stop. In these days, he brought the best doctors to save me. Yet, no matter how good the medicine was, I had no will to survive. My consciousness followed David into the dream. Yet, in reality, Noah clung to me, refusing to let me go. Until the ECG showed a flicker of life. He'd saved me. He claimed to be my savior. My life now owed to him. He urged me to cherish it. I lay in the hospital for a week, Noah never leaving my side, but I knew I couldn't hold on any longer. At life's end, I saw the person I least wanted to encounter. On Christmas Eve, Sophie stood by my bed, probably enjoying my pitiful state. She watched my ugliness and illness, taking it all in. "It's karma," she said. She added, "It's Noah's retribution." For so many years, he played me, used me, made me devoted to him, only to tell me in the end that he never loved me. He even wanted to take away the cat he gave me. Why should he? The words echoed in my stagnant heart, one after another. In the end, neither of us got what we wanted. "Mia, you must be wondering why he hates your child," Sophie said, lowering her head and leaning close to my ear. Before I could react, she delivered a fatal blow because he thought it was your child with Henry. I told him that. I faked the paternity test, and he believed it. A few laughs escaped her. She was trembling, tears welling up in her eyes. He really believed it? My chest was pounding violently. I couldn't tell if it was anger or something else anymore. Yet Sophie kept going, not stopping. "Do you know? When your child died, Noah, the biological father, was actually relieved. He thought with the child gone, he could start over with you." His perceived beginning turned out to be the end. Struggling to open my heavy eyelids, I half opened my eyes and moved my fingers. The first thing I saw was Noah walking in from outside, dragging Sophie along with him. Sophie screamed, "Noah, you deserve this. You deserve it." He did deserve it, and so did I. After Sophie arrived, Noah went berserk. He cursed at everyone like a powerless release of frustration. He tried to offer me water, but I refused to drink from him. I had the nurse do it instead. As he watched, waiting for the nurse to leave, he tried to wipe my lips. I turned my face away, staring out at the snow falling outside the window, numbly muttering, "Christmas is coming, right?" Noah asked, "Yes, it's Christmas tomorrow. Shall we celebrate together?" I needed to hold on until that day to see my David. "Mia, I will make you better," Noah said, grasping my hand forcefully, trying to cover up the needle marks, but failing. I should have known earlier. "You've lost so much weight, your complexion is so pale. How did I not realize you were sick?" He didn't realize, but I told him. I did tell him. That day I asked, "My stomach has been hurting lately. What if it's a terminal illness?" Noah simply put down his chopsticks and said, "Don't die here. It's too ominous." Now, it really was a terminal illness. Didn't he think it was ominous now? Christmas Eve was always bustling and lively. The Christmas tree was stunning. Standing in the center of the mall, decked out with decorations, pedestrians passing by would often stop to take photos, and the colorful lights lit up every smiling face. I sat in the car, wrapped in thick clothes with my hat covering my eyebrows, leaving only my eyes visible. Through the window, I gazed at the Christmas night. It was snowing. The snowflakes were white and pure, much like David's eyes. They were smiling yet also lost. It was here, too, that I sat with David in the car, him pointing to the beautiful Christmas tree. We looked together and saw Noah and Sophie standing under the tree. They were taking a photo together. My heart tightened, and I quickly covered David's eyes. In the vast snow mist, I seemed to see David sitting under the tree in a red sweater, touching the small bells hanging on the Christmas tree. "Mom, this is so beautiful." It was beautiful, but David's smiling face was gone, replaced by Noah's anxious expression, his arm around my shoulder, drawing me close. "Mia." I felt cold, and he tried to warm me up, but he forgot that he was as cold as ice. "Do you want to go for a walk?" I shook my head, only glancing from afar, as if celebrating Christmas for David. The snow kept falling. My strength was fading. Noah seemed to sense my dropping body temperature. He rubbed my wrist, but it was covered in bruises from all the needles. "Mia, are you cold? Can you say something to me?" His cheek pressed against my forehead, still carrying that clean, fresh scent, but it felt so distant, like something from a past life. Over the years, the scent he left me with mostly smelled like Sophie's fragrance. Sitting in the car, we watched the snow together. He ran his chin through my hair, and inside the car, it was quiet and warm. The blizzard was kept out, and we watched the snow together. His voice floated softly in my ear like fluff. "Mia, do you remember why I didn't explain things between us that year? I should have told you over all these years. I had many chances to tell you." The snow was getting heavier. "Is David feeling cold over there?" "It doesn't matter. I will see David soon. After all, this is David's final wish, to be with his mom forever." A layer of frost seemed to form on my eyelids. I closed my eyes, realizing that the last sense to fade away was hearing. My soul felt detached from my body, but Noah's words kept going. "Mia, if it wasn't for Dad telling me he was going to marry your mom, if it wasn't for him making me see you as a sister, we shouldn't have ended up like this." "Do you think so?" "Mia. Mia, are you feeling cold?" "Mia, wait for me." "I won't wait for him. I want to stay far away from him. In this life, the next, and the one after that. I never want to see this person again." The voice became distant, so distant. There were cries. Someone calling my name. The light became so dim. In my vision, it expanded and contracted. I'm so tired. My eyelids are heavy. Can't lift my hand. I want to hug David, but all I catch is a shadow. I keep chasing, crying, running, until I reach the end. Drenched in sweat, panting heavily, I finally saw David. He held a snow-white kitty in his arms. "Mom, you're here?" This time, I finally grasped David's hand.